Okay, yeah.
All right. So maybe it's just a mild delay. All right. So hang on. Let me start this. So if you have, there's a QR code. It will be interactive, so to speak. There's a few things that I want to learn about you. And what I want to talk about today, as I mentioned, is a little bit along the lines that Andy was talking about. And I want to save time, so I might hurry through or skip some slides because the question and answer is often more valuable, I think, anyway, potentially. So hopefully you've had time to click on the QR code, and we'll see if you can let me know who's in the audience, since this is sadly the time, the time when I'm only an hour time zone away, but I can't see anybody. Can't even see these little Zoom images. So I always like to do show of hands when I'm live with an audience. And also on this slides, I put more words than maybe normal, so that I assume English is not everyone's first language, because I know Portuguese is not mine at all. So I've been to Sao Paulo once. Had a lovely time. All right, so it seems do we have any developers in the audience? Any quality folks? Testers? Well, I'm going to move on to the next slide. You keep answering and I'll come back and look at the results. So this is cool. It's all right. We're hardcore agilists. And I'll give a little bit of my take on some of the interesting aspects I think of, since this is the 20th anniversary from when Andy and I were at Snowbird. I think there's some important things to point out. And then I'll just throw a couple of samples out there, just to test if you've seen these sorts of scenarios. Are they agile? I kind of agree a lot with what Andy said. And then, most people use Scrum. Is that sufficient? And then I want to talk about something that is really, I've been practicing for decades, and elements of my practice have always focused on some certain aspects that might not seem quite so clear. And I've really discovered kind of a missing piece. So I want to share that with you, especially from the Agile point of view. It's truly eye-opening for me. So, all right, there's Andy again. It's a different picture than the one he showed. I think I'm always a paparazzi. If you go on my Flickr account, you'll see other photos of Jim. That's Jim Highsmith, and I think Alistair's in the yellow and behind. We went up to the very top of the chairlift, and they went down the side on the other side of the lift. And hey, you want to go on this black diamond right away? No, this is my first run in about 6 years. We had twin girls and we stopped skiing for a while. So yeah, I didn't go down with them. But do you even know, again, I can't see how many of you are young. Do you know why we met? Do you know what problems we were trying to solve? I think a lot of this might be lost on what were we doing 20 years ago? What was happening in our industry 20 years ago? So I'd be curious to know if you know, or what you think. Does my treadmill take too much noise, or is it too disturbing? Anyway, I'm going to move on because apparently, maybe, you're not sure why we were there. Back in the day, there was heavyweight process ruling the day. So we were a bunch of lightweight methodologists working on different ways of doing software. So that's why we met, to try to combat the heavyweight processes that had more marketing dollars than we did. Bob Martin, I think, spearheaded it. He contacted Peter Code, who I worked with, and I was kind of, Peter Code mentored me on object modeling. I often say there were a lot of famous people at Snowbird, and I was not one of them, but I was very vocal. And I want to point out, much like what Andy pointed out, so it's interesting that we both think of the kind of the similar aspects here. One of my mantras that you'll hear me say over and over is humility. And to a person, from as much as I could tell, the phrase I would use is, we left our ego at the door and came in, collaborated, worked openly. And even the phrase at the top, just like Andy said, it's very humble. We didn't say we've discovered the solution. We left it in a verb tense. That means it's still ongoing. We are uncovering, and we're doing it not by ourselves, but by helping others. We are not acting like an academic researcher. We're actually doing it and learning in the course of doing real work. And that's really important. And then at the bottom, the elements that, the this over that also is a big dose of humility, where, once again, you might say it's ambiguous. We didn't tell you one is way, do it one way and not the other, because different circumstances require different levels of emphasis. And I submit Agile is hard because you must use your brain. You need to define and reason behind where in the spectrum do you have to place your process and your ways of working. So I wanted to point that out, because I never thought about it until probably, I don't know, 6 months ago or something like that, as I was looking at it again, that we really practiced fairly selfless, egoless, very humble ways of working during that gathering. And that's something that I preach and practice with teams all over the world. It's that same mindset. So that's really important. For me, I boiled Agile down, because I can't remember all those bullets. But I boil it down to mind the gap. And it's a bit of a play on words from subways or railroad stations, the gap between the platform where you stand and stepping into the train or the subway, right? There's signs in England, the subway, like mind the gap. But I think of it as what we're trying to do with if you can only remember one thing about Agile, it's mind the gap in time between doing something and seeing a result. And that could be interpreted from, I'm writing unit tests, and if I'm as good as Bob Martin, which I'm not, right, seconds go by and he gets feedback. I write acceptance tests in Cucumber. Those might be, multiple seconds, but I get feedback, right? It's the whole point is letting things go long without getting feedback is a risk. And maybe as an aerospace engineer, I'm used to risk mitigation as, balancing risks and balancing systems and holistic views. That's all part of the game. But the idea is to have that kind of a mindset that you should feel unsettled or a little worried if something is going long and long and long. Just like Andy mentioned, long running feature branches. Yeah, if you're not, well, number one, try not to have that. But number two, you damn well better be constantly, getting the latest and integrating it so that you don't wait till the end. But again, that's the whole thing about it. The smaller you can work, the better off you'll be. So that's my one way to turn the Agile Manifesto into something simple that you can tell your mother. I can tell my mom that. So as I go through some of these scenarios, just think, do these happen where you work, or have you seen them? And some of these are some stories that people told me, some of them things I've seen. This is not uncommon where somebody tries to build it all, everything they can think of, and they spend months or even years, and they keep it hidden because certainly they know best. Well, in this particular case, it was not a commercial success. So imagine, could you have learned that? That's a long gap in time. I've worked with plenty of companies where, we're ready to release and they want something more that's, there's one awesome tool we built for an insurance company. And they wanted all 4 product lines to be loaded first. And that was kind of a laborious process that had nothing to do with the software per se. I convinced them to go live with one. Like, come on, you can't possibly always sell all 4. What's your most popular? Let's get that rolling. And meanwhile, as we get that rolling, we'll get feedback. Because up until that point, I explained, we've been digging a hole, putting their money in it, and the sooner we put it out in front of the customers. Meanwhile, we had close relationships with beta testers all along the way. But we wanted to now put it in the hands of real users, and it was a raging success. And they made millions of dollars within the first months, and then they kept adding more lines. But yeah, working on something long, that's not agile. This is again something that somebody told me about some kind of agile transformation. They had to happen yesterday. So they trained everybody up on all the ceremonies. What do you think happened? You think that you think the company, all the teams are trained, but do you think the company is agile? Probably not. Here was a case where we're working to help the team improve. Can we make that 8-week development cycle shorter? And then come to find out, the upstream process was 8 months to decide to do that 8 weeks. So I'm like, what the heck? Who cares if we make it 4 weeks? What if we even make it 1 week? You spent 8 months figuring out if you wanted to do it. If you want to actually get more value out the door faster, how about reducing that other part of the process, not just the team? Especially in this case, it even failed. The original, they didn't build it right, so they didn't have tight enough feedback loops. So all that upfront effort, and it still wasn't right. So I don't know. Is that agile? Another case where a wonderful feature was built. The product owners were certain that the users wanted this graphing feature. Unfortunately, nobody used it. So now they decided, all right, let's build, maybe they need a dashboard to then put these graphical widgets inside a dashboard. So they're working on that now. And they've even added extra bells and whistles. They didn't do the minimum required to get that out the door. So it still hasn't shipped yet. It's actually, the point that I took this little anecdote, it hadn't shipped yet. And the team was doubtful that, if they didn't use it this way, why do you think they're going to use it this way? we don't think the business knows about the customer. And there's another, I'll just move off of that one. Now, I get to choose this story because it was something I did with the team, where similar to that story I had with Andy Hunt about this particular, it's a SaaS product, so it's for selling pumps to world-class, some of the largest pump companies in the world. And these are large pumps. Some of them cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, some even millions. So these aren't just, simple pumps you buy off of a shelf. So this was the same company who wanted that can you build me a feature that we can demo at the trade show when we did. So this was, this client was beginning to gain a lot of trust, and we used them to help build our product because we had feature flippers. Just because we put a feature out there, it didn't need to be exposed to every client, so we could control it. So she said, we have this internal brochure library that our distributors access through a kind of their intranet. And could you, because you guys are so good, can you build us a product brochure library? It had kinds of things that engineering needed for specifications and how to install it and all kinds of things. So it was, fairly straightforward. We mocked up, I'm sure anybody on the call could probably sketch up something about a product brochure library. Mocked it up, got it approved. A few weeks later, and then these were even, like I remember the developer, he probably hadn't been working with us for a year. He was new out of college, out of university. So we had things built fairly in a good onboarding, good logical development environment. And within a few weeks, we had our, the very initial smallest possible version. Matter of fact, you might consider it a stupidly small version, but that's kind of how I roll, is what I would say. It was so simplistic, it did not even have multiple folders. It was, you dump files up there, you can get files back. You have a little bit of information about a file. And of course, we knew and we designed it such that, library has folders and different structures. Let me go find these kinds of pumps, searches, how many downloads, all kinds of things we could add. But we proved that we could get something out the door, get it in front of the client, they could start uploading, they could start testing it, and then just as they were asking for logical next features, we had already had them on the roadmap and were building them out. And we continued to roll those enhancements of raging success. Because it was small, we delivered quickly, we iterated, just like Andy was talking about. It's not magic, it's not complicated. So what do a lot of teams find themselves using? Scrum for sure, it's huge. So does it mean if we do Scrum, we're automatically Agile? Unfortunately, no. And I think Andy was mentioning this too. So, and Andy and I didn't collaborate at all. So we haven't seen each other in quite a long time. But you can tell that we've had a similar journey, similar learnings. So there's probably some value in the fact that we have some common perceptions. I will say, you can look also up on Flickr, my Flickr account, or agileuprising.com. I put some artifacts, like some of the original notes that I took while we were at Snowbird. And I remember my first time I ever heard of Scrum was up at Snowbird. And to me, it just looked like a kind of a simple project management technique with feedback loops. Looked pretty cool. It had nothing to do with software. And so I like the fact that they're trying to bring kind of bring back that simplicity, which is good because unfortunately a lot of people have taken it to be some kind of gospel. And there are many days in a stand-up, I would say, may the Scrum gods strike me down for what I'm about to do, jokingly, but Scrum's a start. Kanban's a start. Lean, you can come up with all kinds of ways. And the point is, it's only a start. So you need to continually refine, possibly, maybe even a custom process that works for you. Because it is, if you're building software in a complex business environment, treating things as complicated, there's a subtle difference between complex, where you might not be able to hold it all in your head, and complicated, where it's just this giant diagram. Big, giant things or large volumes never scared me. It's the complexity that's more of the challenge. So what do we need to do? What is more of what I like to call an uncommon solution? Something that I'm really working to learn much more about. If I were to ask you, Agilistas, what's the let's just say three most critical ingredients, like for you to successfully build a product and get it out the door, what's necessary? What's the most important things? Cue the music. Oh, there we go. What is value? Ooh, that's a good one. Communication helps. I'm mostly through just write it in the Jira ticket, right? Listening to the users, yeah. Because, there we go. A bunch of people must have put that word in there. Yeah, those are all make a lot of sense, right? Team organization, value, understanding the product, communicating about the product, what the idea is, having an idea, listening to users, collaboration and trust. Yeah, those are all great. And this is a bit of a trick question. So I will say, in the 20-some years that I've been asking this question, maybe 21, probably since at least 2000. Only one time did anybody come close. Now, luckily, I saw somebody that has an answer down there, so I'm going to reveal the first one. I saw somebody put down people. I know that's a stupid trick question, right? People, well, of course. But the reason I say that is, give me 10 awesome, highly collaborative, wonderfully communicative, all the positive attributes you can think to form the best team with 10 people. I bet I can outdo teams of 100 that are following some horrible process. Because really awesome people will create the process, and they'll even create tools. So this is kind of a little bit of my mantra, that it's people, process, and tools, and simultaneously it's if you just stick with Scrum, well, that's just one part, right? That's a process. Or if you just stick with Jira or sticky notes, that's just a tool. So being able to combine all of these and then throw in something, this is what I'm learning. I always said people, process, and tools, and I always said in that order, but it's actually what we're able to do now with some of the techniques we're applying is it's simultaneously. I've learned that sometimes I'd have amazing success with some teams and maybe doing these similar things, not quite as good success with others. It almost like, hello, is this on? one of those moments with teams. And it took me a while to learn that each of us, it's like a developmental psychology, and each of us has a way of making meaning. And each of us has a different orientation for, receiving messages as instructions, like command and control, or as an opportunity to be autonomous. And so these are some of the differences that I've learned from Jon Turley, who I've been working with for a couple of years at Adaptivist. And he's taught me so much of what I say is this is the missing ingredient. Because if you can't crack the code on the people, you're just fiddling around the edges. You might be able to get their process to go a little better. You might be able to improve their tools to support the process. Yeah, big deal. But high performing teams require those other elements that you put on the word blurbs about understanding value and collaboration, communication, right? Communication. If I toss out an idea that is just a little uncomfortable for a team, just pushes them a little beyond their current state, and this is at the individual level, that's good, because then they'll grow, they'll learn. But if I put something that's way beyond their leading edge, it will probably be like, this Kern guy is crazy. So it's a really important skill when you're leading teams, and even we help work with teams to develop it, because it changes the conversation, and that's frankly the most important thing. That is the leading indicator to moving an organization, is you start to break down silos, you start to get more cross-functional collaboration, you start to get people to understand a lot more about the dynamics between them and how to have better conversations. So that's really a very exciting development for me personally. Because I submit Agile's hard. And I say that because you can't, our son works in medical device machining, and he turned me on to a book called 2 Second Lean. It's a funny little book with a funny little story about a business owner's journey about learning lean, and the fact that, in the mornings you could ask, is there anything we can do just to improve ourselves by 2 seconds? So that kind of mentality, different ways to constantly challenge yourself, versus, I heard some people talk about SAFe earlier with Andy. It's a lot like rational unified process. Those processes have had a lot of value in that they were almost compendiums of knowledge for software development. And SAFe borrows from Agile and Lean and I forget what else. So a lot of times I'll joke that I can close my eyes and pull up one of those SAFe diagrams. I probably have one here somewhere. I'm looking underneath my standing desk. And I put my finger on it, open my eyes, I probably am okay with wherever my finger is. Oh, yeah, a Kanban backlog for the roadmap. Hell yeah, I do that all the time. All the things are probably okay. And I learned the reason it's so intriguing to a lot of companies is because it's prescriptive. They have, a ton of information for that element that my finger might land on the big diagram. They will have templates, undoubtedly, pages of documentation, all kinds of instructions. So for an organization who's more aligned towards control than autonomy, it's extremely intriguing. Sure, let's bring this giant process to bear, because we can't figure out how to do Agile in the small, and we can't figure out how to get all of our dependencies working. Let's spend a couple years implementing this larger process that might help us. and I'll admit, like when I looked at a tool like Jira Align, it answered a lot of my dreams about, oh, if only we could see how different parts of the organization are, doing different products and have a bigger picture. So there's some cool things you can do, but there's a big hurdle to get to be able to do that. And there was a company that we were working with, real smart folks that have a combination hardware, software deliveries. So they had two, radically different types of cultures. And I tried to be really cautious with them. They were interested in SAFe and things like Jira Align. And, I was trying to protect them, but they felt they could do it. And they had an opportunity to completely change the way they do business and be able to mold themselves to what the tools wanted and make it make sense for them. So it can succeed. But the point is, you really need to understand a lot more to make those sorts of things successful and not just fall victim to, it took you 2 years to figure out this didn't help us either, because there's other, they had a much better mindset and approach to learning fast, failing fast, right? So a lot of it was their mindset. And that doesn't always occur in large enterprises. They were extremely nimble. So mindset isn't always the right word, but I read a very influential book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And it explains a lot that, for example, professional athletes, we have one here in Philadelphia, 6'10", Ben Simmons, undoubtedly, I don't know this to be a fact, but reading the book, undoubtedly his whole life, he was the best, picked number one in the draft, the best. And sometimes when children are just naturally good and they get praised, oh, Ben, you're awesome, you're the best. And they're like, deep down, they go, well, I didn't even have to work for it. I'm just naturally gifted. Some, and this also works for really smart people. They're naturally gifted. Things come easy. Yeah, second grade, no problem. Third. And the risk there is they develop a fixed mindset. They don't realize, versus I had older brothers and sister. I worked hard, I was 6 years younger. I worked hard and I think I outworked them, and I'm not as smart as they are. But that let me know I could grow, versus I'm stuck, I'm fixed, I'm just really good because of what's in me. I can't change it, right? So I think that's really important. That's just one aspect of a mindset, but that one always resonated with me because you can see it. I'm not able to diagnose this Ben Simmons guy, but I guarantee you that's what it is. He grew up everything always easy just because he's a phenomenal athlete, a freak of nature. So the point about mindset is we use leadership development framework to talk about different stages of development, and it helps us better engage conversations. So it's really a way to help teams get better at, and even individual leaders. We do some, Turley will do some individual coaching, but how to deal with a complex world. It can have a big impact. And for the teams, one of the, there's easy ways to experiment. There's easy ways to kind of help people grow in their development. And the simplest way to think about it, I'm sure you all are familiar with, blast radius, safe experimentation, and fast. We talk about things like fail fast, but you need the support of management, because if management pretends to say, go ahead, you're autonomous now, but then as soon as somebody breaks the build or builds a feature that's not good, or something, and then they get hit on the head, well, that's not safe. That's going to push them back into command and control, waiting for instructions instead of taking advantage of invitation to do something. And the other thing is slack. I have a book on the shelf called Slack. It's really old and yellowed pages. Slack isn't the tool. If anything, Slack is one of the worst inventions for making sure we ruin every minute of your day, because someone can ping you, interrupt you, they get what they want, and meanwhile you're like, let's see, where was I on this really difficult coding problem? But Slack is important. Don't fill your to-do list up to the top. Slack is important if you want to innovate. If you just, it's that sort of tug of war between efficiency and enough room to innovate. Right? If you get too efficient, efficiency is good if you're constantly building a Toyota Camry. Efficiency is not good if you're trying to innovate and trying to have time to think up ideas and do a little bit, or even have times to be interrupted with something that you might be able to slip in and do work on something more valuable, that there's like an emergency, so to speak. And then the feedback loops are critical. We do that. We kind of really try to work things through, like even our services, labs and pilots, and then operational. But you need to treat, and I'll give credit to books like the Business Model Canvas, the Value Proposition Canvas, Startup Users Guide, or something like that. One of my favorite things is the answer is not in the room or the building. So a lot of times we are egotistical and we think for sure the customer wants this, and we design this big thing without getting tight feedback loops. And all I suggest is treat your ideas, features, ways to change our process, anything, treat them as hypotheses and consider, like I've switched my development from caring about roadmaps and features to caring about roadmaps and outcomes. So even though to me a feature always was client valued, I still say, well, if we build that, what will we get? More subscriptions, more users, a better NPS rating. Pick something, but you should have an outcome and test things as a hypothesis. And I build things into the software to actually measure usage and measure outcomes, to automate the fact that this is how much we care about. It's on the roadmap, we think it'll do this, and we build it into the tool and the product to actually test those hypotheses. So for me, maybe because of my aerospace engineering background, systems thinking is kind of natural, because you have to think of often the whole system. And from idea to cash, or idea to some kind of value. There were some good words on the one word cloud about value, because it's not always money, it could be other things. But the point is to know it. The teams don't, if you ask your teams, hey, what's our business purpose? What's our system purpose? Why are we building this? If they can't answer that, if they don't know what value is, well, we have a workshop to help you do that, to get at that sort of cross-functional value and value stream stuff. Because it's truly critical to understand that and to have that more holistic view. And it's not any one practice. Daily stand-ups, if they become a routine and they're just status reports, why bother? If you do retros, nobody cares enough to actually take action, why bother? So for me, the elements are around being humble and curious, and notice that it's not the other person. It's not for everybody else to become more agile. To me, it's a challenge to be agile at times and to be humble and curious. So it really does start in here, up here and in your heart. I know that sounds, for an engineer, that sounds very touchy-feely, but it truly is. It's a system, and it's really important. I always liken it to yoga, where you're never a master. You're always a student, and I feel the same way about Agile. And it's how can I always get better? I love it when I get a feature request that I sort of sat on for a while. Someone else asks for something. Like on the side, I write code all the time for firefighters. So for like since 2006 or so. So I actually, practice what I preach, and without staff. So it's a little harder, but I love it when, boom, I finally decide this is the third person that asked for this. Okay, I'm going to build it. I write a failing cucumber test, an acceptance test. That drives me down towards, having to eventually write a failing unit test. That drives me to the model, and then back out again, and then back out to the user interface. And then an hour later, I was done, tested, pushed, committed, and then I send emails to the people saying, oh, by the way, here's this feature. And that makes me feel good, that kind of a tight loop process, it's pretty agile. Anyway, that's what I think about it, and happy to take questions. Matter of fact, I love questions, and this just happens to be a beautiful place. That's one of our daughters. Yeah. And it's a place that my wife does service trips for. We supported an orphanage and a girls' school, and it's just spectacular. So in case you're so motivated to check out that board. But anyway, I'm open for questions.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Jon, thank you very much for your time. We have a lot of people here talk about your way to explain about agility, and you continue to make exercise at the same time. Anyway, it's good to know. If you have a word, an expression, or advice to give us about how agility can work in our company, what will it be, for example? Just one word. I don't know if it's possible, actually.
Well, it might be. Yeah. I wonder, like, the word that came to mind, I'm not sure if it's good, but for some reason, the first word that popped into mind was, now I have two words. So the first word was pragmatic, if that translates, pragmatic.
No, yeah, we have this pragmatic.
Yeah. And the second word was business.
Business.
And what I mean by that is it's so important to understand the context and the vision and the goal of whether I'm at a developer, I'm writing a feature, just a small feature, or a large feature set, or an epic, or the whole product. It's so important that you have a connection to, and I like to say, the level above. So if I'm asked to do some work down here, I want to know, well, what's the context? What's the business reason? Why? What problem are we solving? So for me, the reason I might try to help an organization adopt agile ways of working is to help improve your customers, in that angle, then you're probably, if you're selling stuff, if you're building a product to other people, to then help improve the business bottom line, as we would say. And okay. So yeah, it's very pragmatic, and to me, it's all about the business. It's what's the best way we can deliver value on behalf of the business and our customers.
Making sense. The interesting thing, I've been in Toronto for almost 1 year, and I had a chance to work in this company, small company called Tesla Motors. And this expression is always on the wall, and mind the gap. And I couldn't find a connection between my work and and now I can know the origin, mind the gap is because we have the gap all the time, you need something.
Is that really on the walls of Tesla?
Yeah.
Wow, maybe they stole it from me. No.
Yeah. Maybe, who knows.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have some questions here in the chat. I don't know if Carlos, we can share the questions.
Yeah, I see. I don't know where to start. I can start at the bottom. 3 tips to give to the team.
Take your time, Jon.
Yeah, I believe for me it would be, I don't know why our industry likes martial arts references, but the shu, ha, ri, I think it means something like learn from the master and practice the steps, which means maybe you pick up Scrum, maybe you learn Kanban. So it's okay to make the cake exactly like the recipe to start, maybe the second time, maybe even the third time. But if a year later you're doing it the same way, you are not taking the opportunity to learn. So you start wherever you're at, but constantly be evaluating, could we do this better? Take that feedback loop to heart, and it needs to be for your team, and question everything and then do things about it. And the most important elements for your team to learn is how to be a team, not a bunch of individuals, but rather how do we work together where we can say uncomfortable things to each other, like, oh, why are we doing development and then QA writes the test? You sure that's good? I think that's a horrible way to work. But the idea is question everything with boldness and try to get better. There's a good one about why do people forget the manifesto's first paragraph. I guess they skip to the bullets of the meat. But yeah, it's important to, we're not, as we would say, we're not God's gift to the universe for how to write software. At the time, nobody knew this would happen. I am very humbled to have been a part of it. And from my experience doing Defense Department work, you might imagine why a lot of those bullets are there is because of, these were the kinds of experiences I had. And the bullets that we wrote down there helped combat those heavyweight, stupid ideas about creating some plan that's a year long and thinking it can be plus or minus 5% accurate. Like, what planet does that, right? Things like that. So yeah, just keep referencing that first paragraph. That's a good one. How do you fight the huge marketing effort? You can't, I don't think. There's good, you can have success all kinds of ways, but the marketing engine is huge and it's a start, right? Some people, you have to learn something somehow, but certainly I believe software is probably closer to maybe hundreds or centuries ago of kind of an apprenticeship, or even what you might do with machining or other trade skills. It's more of an apprenticeship than it is, I can go, and not to pick on the Scrum Master certificate because it's a start, but that doesn't give you nearly, what experience and working and being humble and helping the team does, right? So I guess for me, it's an industry that's cranked along quite successfully, and yeah, I'm not sure how to fight it. Jilly likes beer and treadmill. True that. Were we influenced by minimalism? I would, I'm not sure what that is per se, but I would hazard a guess that I like to say I'm fairly verbose. I document more than you might expect. I'm a process nut more than you might expect, but yet not. right? Like if you looked at my Jira workflows, they're as simple as hell, because it's not about that. And if you looked at how, combinations of writing issues and stories and maybe some documentation in the wiki for larger concepts, I would say that might on the surface might not look like it's minimalist, but it's minimalist in terms of helping to communicate and have conversations around. So I certainly like to think that I try to be, I like to say, even for folks who seem to have trouble building less, it's really hard to work with people. They think they need all these things, and I look at features and go, why the hell did you add that? They're not even using the system yet, and you added something that might be useful after there's 10 things, right? And it's that kind of mindset that a lot of people have trouble not doing the whole. And so for me, that is a good minimalist angle from the perspective of, I say, try to do the smallest thing you think of, and then even less. And that was my library example. I did the stupidest library ever. It didn't matter because I knew it wasn't going to last long. And you got feedback and started using it, right? And it takes guts and bravery and hard conversations, especially with product people. Or sometimes you run into organizations that have this huge monumental effort to improve something. By golly, I'm going to do it all then, because it was really hard to get this approved. I'm going to do it all whether we need it or not. So yeah, it's difficult, but maybe I'm a minimalist. Let's see. Could I speak around companies in North America and other global regions that are moving onto these mindsets? Yeah, so we worked, with small companies in radically different business domains, and the kind of workshop and the sort of other elements that we do with some individual coaching and we call it dialogue partnering and sort of the leadership development profile work that we do. It really helps sort of, it's like a two-pronged approach. So we can help the team, cross-functional team. We can help. A lot of times it's the first time they got together, sadly. So sometimes just even that, the conversations start changing. People look at the other ones. Oh, I didn't know you did that. Wow, you really, And it's like, oh my God, you all work together. What the hell, right? It's not so hard, but apparently it is, right? And I always, when we're working with teams, I always remind them, look, it's easy. I'm not in your world, right? You're a fish. You don't know you're wet. You're in a box. I can see the box. You're in it, and I'm in a box. You can probably see the box I'm in, and I can't, right? I mean, it's that's just the way it is, and it's just helping to sort of open up the possibilities that, can I stand back? Even trying to write a story. I'm trying to help people learn how to write a story. But sometimes you see the issues. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm sure in your head it's clear, but could you please try to take a perspective a little bit back? Like, who's the user in this story? I can't even tell. Oh yeah, well, I knew what I meant. I know, even so from little things to big things, we really try to work with teams in all walks of life to help kind of build that sort of not only the idea about what is value and can we build a better we do capture the current and then we work on the next, right? So the future, and along the way we deal with trying to help them developmentally, and I mean not software development but human, like personal development.
Okay, John, thank you very much for your time and your knowledge. Actually, congratulations about your ONG Tree for Hope, your organization. Congratulations, and see you soon in the next event.
Yes, thank you.
Be safe.
And all I know is obrigado.
De nada.
Bye-bye.